Hi. Hi, I'm Miss Hearn. Let's get started. In this video, we're going to solve this rational equation. And the reason why I call it a rational equation is because it basically has fractions in it. The root of the word rational is the word ratio or fraction. So this is a rational equation with variables in the denominator. And we're asked in part A to write the value or values of the variable that make each denominator 0. These are called the restrictions on the variable. So why are we interested in values of x that if we plug them in would make the denominator 0? Because you're not allowed to have 0 in a fraction's denominator, right? So that would be an undefined expression. So whenever you have a rational equation, you need to check for where any of the denominators are equal to 0. Now, these first two denominators are simple binomials, linear, so there's no factoring required. But when you see something like x squared plus 2x minus 8, which could potentially be factored, you want to do that. It'll make setting the denominator equal to 0 and solving much easier. Now, since the coefficient of the x squared is 1, it's enough to look for factors of negative 8 that sum up to positive 2. So that would be 4 and negative 2 would multiply to give you negative 8, and they would add up to positive 2. So that means that this guy is going to factor into x plus 4, x minus 2. Oftentimes these factors will turn out to be exactly the factors you saw on the other side of the equation. That's kind of a cheat, but that's often how it turns out. And you should never assume that, but just double check it. Okay, so setting those denominators equal to 0 would come down to setting each factor to 0. So really all we need to do is solve for where x minus 2 is 0 and where x plus 4 is 0. That's going to be when x is 2 and x is negative 4. And so these are the values x is not allowed to be. These are the restricted values. Now the second part of this problem is to actually solve the equation. So we're going to, I find it easiest to first find the LCD, the least common denominator of the fractions, in factored form, and then multiply it through on both sides. So what we're going to do is LCD means each unique factor being multiplied together to the highest power it appears. So in this case, each factor doesn't have a power, so we just need x minus 2x plus 4. Notice now every factor that you see in the original equation is represented in our LCD at least once. You don't want to write it more than once, by the way. Okay, so we are going to now multiply through on both sides of our equation. So I'm going to rewrite the equation with just making some space in between for multiplying by the LCD. Okay, so now when you multiply both sides of the equation by x minus 2x plus 4, you have to distribute it to each term, and you're essentially multiplying a whole number times a fraction. So the whole number goes into the numerator. So we're going to have x minus 2 times x plus 4 in each one of the numerators. Okay, now let's see what divides out. So x minus 2 divides into x minus 2 once. X plus 4 divides into x plus 4 once. X minus 2 and x plus 4 divide in once. So notice that we chose our LCD correctly because all the denominators canceled out, and we're left with 1 times x plus 4 minus 3 times x minus 2 equals 6. So this, at this point, you kind of regroup and say, what kind of equation do I have now? It's possible you'll have a quadratic equation. It's possible you'll have a linear. In this case, linear, because there's no squares on the x's. So to solve a linear equation, you're going to distribute through any parentheses. So 1 distributed through doesn't change anything. We have x plus 4. Distributing the negative 3, we have negative 3x plus 6. Be careful with your signs. Equals 6. And now we need to isolate, combine like terms, and get x's on one side and numbers on the other. So here we're going to have x minus 3x is negative 2x. These two, 4 and 6, add up to 10, but I'm going to subtract them over to the other side and get negative 4. And then we're going to divide both sides by negative 2. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 leaves positive 2. All right, so this is our proposed solution. But is it a solution? So in order to be a solution, it can't be one of our restricted values. And unfortunately, 2 was one of our restricted values. So what that means is that we actually have no solution. We have to throw this one out. That was our only possible solution. So we're just going to say empty set or no solution. Okay, so it is possible for our equations to turn out to be contradictions that have no values that make the statement true. There's no number x we can plug into this equation that would actually work out. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please remember to like it. There's a link to the written out version of this problem in the description of the video. And if you're one of my students, there's also a link to all the Ask My Instructor questions in your online classroom.